is an ABC News special report, President Biden's farewell address to the nation. Now reporting, David Muir.
Good evening again, everyone. In just a few moments from now, President Biden will be delivering his farewell address to the nation from the Oval Office. The president in the final days of his administration, reflecting on a political career spanning 5 decades. In a letter to the American people today, he says, serving the nation has been, quote, the privilege of my life. Tonight, President Biden is expected to look back at his own legacy while at the same time discussing how he sees the country moving forward. The president writing today, history is now in your hands. He came into the White House when America was in the grips of the pandemic and millions of Americans were out of work. He will leave Washington with unemployment down to 4.1%. The president saying his administration created more than 16 million jobs. 2024 was a record year for the stock market. His crowning achievement, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act. Despite all of that, many Americans still struggling with the effects of inflation, especially the high cost of groceries. In July, he dropped out of the presidential race amid intense pressure from within his own party and concerns about his ability to serve another term. On Monday, America and the world will witness the peaceful transfer of power, and President-elect Donald Trump will make his return to the White House. Let's listen tonight to President Biden from the Resolute Desk in the Oval Office.
My fellow Americans, I'm speaking to you tonight from the Oval Office. Before I begin, let me speak to important news from earlier today. After 8 months of nonstop negotiation, by my administration, a ceasefire and a hostage deal has been reached by Israel and Hamas, the elements of which I laid out in great detail in May of this year. This plan was developed and negotiated by my team and will be largely implemented by the incoming administration. That's why I told my team to keep the incoming administration fully informed, because that's how it should be, working together as Americans. This will be my final address to you from the American people from the Oval Office, from this desk as president. And I've been thinking a lot about who we are and maybe more importantly, who we should be. Long ago in New York Harbor, an iron worker installed beam after beam, day after day. He was joined by steel workers, stonemasons, engineers. They built not just a single structure, but a beacon of freedom. The very idea of America was so big, we felt the entire world needed to see. The Statue of Liberty, a gift from France after our Civil War. Like the very idea of America, it was built not by one person, but by many people from every background and from around the world. Like America, the Statue of Liberty is not standing still. Her foot literally steps forward atop a broken chain of human bondage. She's on the march, and she literally moves. She was built to sway back and forth to withstand the fury of stormy weather, to stand the test of time because storms are always coming. She sways a few inches, but she never falls into the current below. An engineering marvel. The Statue of Liberty is also an enduring symbol of the soul of our nation. A soul shaped by forces that bring us together and by forces that pull us apart. And yet, through good times and tough times, we've withstood it all. A nation of pioneers and explorers, of dreamers and doers, of ancestors native to this land, of ancestors who came by force, a nation of immigrants who came to build a better life, a nation holding the torch of the most powerful idea ever in the history of the world, that all of us are created equal, that all of us deserve to be treated with dignity, justice, and fairness, that democracy must defend and be defined and be imposed, moved in every way possible. Our rights, our freedoms, our dreams. But we know the idea of America, our institution, our people, our values that uphold it are constantly being tested. Ongoing debates about power and the exercise of power, but whether we lead by the example of our power or the power of our example, whether we show the courage to stand up to the abuse of power or we yield to it. After 50 years at the center of all of this, I know that believing in the idea of America means respecting the institutions that govern a free society: the presidency, the Congress, the courts, a free and independent press, institutions that are rooted, they just might not reflect the timeless words, but they echo the words of the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident. Rooted in the timeless words of the Constitution, we the people. Our system of separation of powers, checks and balances, it may not be perfect, but it's maintained our democracy for nearly 250 years, longer than any other nation in history that's ever tried such a bold experiment. In the past 4 years, our democracy has held strong. And every day I've kept my commitment to be president for all Americans through one of the toughest periods in our nation's history. I've had a great partner in Vice President Kamala Harris. It's been the honor of my life to see the resilience of essential workers getting us through a once-in-a-century pandemic, the heroism of service members and first responders keeping us safe, the determination of advocates standing up for our rights and our freedoms instead of losing their jobs to an economic crisis that we inherited. Millions of Americans now have the dignity of work. Millions of entrepreneurs and companies creating new businesses and industries, hiring American workers, using American products. And together, we've launched a new era of American possibilities. One of the greatest modernizations of infrastructure in our entire history, from new roads, bridges, clean water, affordable high-speed internet for every American. We invented the semiconductor, smaller than the tip of my little finger, and now is bringing those chip factories and those jobs back to America where they belong, creating thousands of jobs. Finally, giving Medicare the power to negotiate lower prescription drug prices for millions of seniors. And finally, doing something to protect our children and our families by passing the most significant gun safety law in 30 years and bringing violent crime to a 50-year low, meeting our sacred obligation to over 1 million veterans so far who are exposed to toxic materials, and to their families, providing medical care and education benefits and more for their families. You know, it will take time to feel the full impact of all we've done together. But the seeds are planted, and they'll grow and they'll bloom for decades to come. At home, we've created nearly 17 million new jobs, more than any other single administration, a single term. More people have health care than ever before. And overseas, we've strengthened NATO. Ukraine is still free. And we pulled ahead of our competition with China, and so much more. I'm so proud of how much we've accomplished together for the American people. And I wish the incoming administration success, because I want America to succeed. That's why I've held my duty to ensure a peaceful and orderly transition of power, to ensure we lead by the power of our example. I have no doubt that America's in a position to continue to succeed. That's why my farewell address tonight, I want to warn the country of some things that give me great concern. This is a dangerous and that's the dangerous concentration of power in the hands of a very few ultra-wealthy people. And the dangerous consequences if their abuse of power is left unchecked. Today, an oligarchy is taking shape in America of extreme wealth, power, and influence that literally threatens our entire democracy, our basic rights and freedoms, and a fair shot for everyone to get ahead. We see the consequences all across America, and we've seen it before, more than a century ago. But the American people stood up to the robber barons back then and busted the trusts. They didn't punish the wealthy, just made the wealthy play by the rules everybody else had to. Workers want rights to earn their fair share. You know, they were dealt into the deal, and it helped put us on a path to building the largest middle class the most prosperous century any nation in the world has ever seen. And we've got to do that again. In the last 4 years, that is exactly what we've done. People should be able to make as much as they can, but play by the same rules. Pay their fair share of taxes. So much is at stake. Right now, the existential threat of climate change has never been clearer. Just look across the country, from California to North Carolina. That's why I signed the most significant climate and clean energy law ever in the history of the world, and the rest of the world is trying to model it now. It's working, creating jobs and industries of the future. Now, we've proven we don't have to choose between protecting the environment and growing the economy. We're doing both. The powerful forces want to wield their unchecked influence to eliminate the steps we've taken to tackle the climate crisis, to serve their own interest for power and profit. We must not be bullied into sacrificing the future of our children and our grandchildren. We must keep pushing forward and push faster. There's no time to waste. It's also clear that American leadership in technology is an unparalleled source of innovation that can transform lives. We see the same dangers of the concentration of technology, power, and wealth. You know, his farewell address, President Eisenhower spoke of the dangers of the military-industrial complex. He warned us then about, and I quote, the potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power, end of quote. 6 decades later, I'm equally concerned about the potential rise of a tech-industrial complex that could pose real dangers for our country as well. Americans are being buried under an avalanche of misinformation and disinformation, enabling the abuse of power. The free press is crumbling. Editors are disappearing. Social media is giving up on fact-checking. The truth is smothered by lies told for power and for profit. We must hold the social platforms accountable to protect our children, our families, and our very democracy from the abuse of power. Meanwhile, artificial intelligence is the most consequential technology of our time, perhaps of all time. Nothing offers more profound possibilities and risks for our economy and our security, our society, for humanity. Artificial intelligence even has the potential to help us answer my call to end cancer as we know it. But unless safeguards are in place, AI could spawn new threats to our rights, our way of life, to our privacy, how we work, and how we protect our nation. We must make sure AI is safe and trustworthy and good for all humankind. In the age of AI, it's more important than ever that the people must govern. And as the land of liberty, America, not China, must lead the world in the development of AI. You know, in the years ahead, it'll help to be, it's going to be up to the president, the presidency, the Congress, the courts, the free press, and the American people to confront these powerful forces. We must reform the tax code, not by giving the biggest tax cuts to billionaires, but by making them begin to pay their fair share. We need to get dark money. That's that hidden funding behind too many campaigns contributions. We need to get it out of our politics. We need to enact an 18-year time limit, time and term, for the strongest ethics and the strongest ethics reforms for our Supreme Court. We need to ban members of Congress from trading stock while they're in the Congress. We need to amend the Constitution to make clear that no president is immune from crimes that he or she commits while in office. The president's power is not limited. It's not absolute, and it shouldn't be. And in a democracy, there's another danger to the concentration of power and wealth. It erodes a sense of unity and common purpose. It causes distrust and division. Participating in our democracy becomes exhausting and even disillusioning. and people don't feel like they have a fair shot. We have to stay engaged in the process. I know it's frustrating. A fair shot is what makes America, America. Everyone's entitled to a fair shot. Not a guarantee, but just a fair shot. An even playing field. Going as far as your hard work and talent can take you. We can never lose that essential truth, remain who we are. I've always believed, and I've told other world leaders, America can be defined by one word: possibilities. Only in America do we believe anything is possible. Like a kid with a stutter from modest beginnings in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and Claremont, Delaware, sitting behind this desk in the Oval Office as President of the United States. That's the magic of America. It's all around us. Upstairs in the residence of the White House, I've walked by a painting of the Statue of Liberty I don't know how many times. In the painting, there's several workers climbing on the outstretched arm of the statue that holds the torch. It reminds me every day I pass it of the story and soul of our nation and the power of the American people. There's a story of a veteran. This is a veteran, the son of an immigrant, whose job was to climb that torch and polish the amber panes so rays of light could reach out as far as possible. He was known as the keeper of the flame. He once said of the Statue of Liberty, quote, speaks a silent universal language, one of hope that anyone who seeks and speaks freedom can understand. Yes, we sway back and forth to withstand the fury of the storm, to stand the test of time. A constant struggle, a short distance between peril and possibility. But what I believe is the America of our dreams is always closer than we think. And it's up to us to make our dreams come true. Let me close by stating my gratitude to so many people, to the members of my administration, as well as public service and first responders across the country and around the world. Thank you for stepping up to serve. To our service members and your families, it's been the highest honor of my life to lead you as Commander-in-Chief. And of course, to Kamala and our incredible partner, historic Vice President. She and Doug have become like family. And to me, family's everything. My deepest appreciation to our amazing First Lady who's with me in the Oval today. For our entire family. You're the love of my life and the lives of my love. My eternal thanks to you, the American people. After 50 years of public service, I give you my word. I still believe in the idea for which this nation stands. A nation where the strengths of our institutions and the character of our people matter and must endure. Now it's your turn to stand guard. May you all be the keeper of the flame. May you keep the faith. I love America. You love it too. God bless you all. And may God protect our troops. Thank you for this great honor.
President Biden at the Resolute desk in the Oval Office, his farewell address to the nation, saying it's your turn to stand guard. He talked about democracy, that it must be defended, the soul of our nation he spoke of. He said, in the past 4 years, I'm proud to have been president for all of the people. He did warn about issues on the horizon, artificial intelligence. He talked at length about the concentration of technology, power, and wealth, saying technology will help the U.S. lead globally, but that we must be careful about the concentration of power and wealth that comes with it. He talked about the dangers of disinformation, falsehoods, the lack of fact-checking, and the lies that have permeated the discussion in this country. But in the end, he said, I believe in defending possibilities and in defending democracy. And our chief White House correspondent, Mary Bruce, he made it very clear. He said, history essentially is now in your hands, to the American people.
Exactly, David. This was a chance for President Biden to tout his accomplishments, try to define his own legacy, but also argue the importance of American democracy and the need to protect it, saying the ideals of America are constantly being tested. He issued a harsh warning to the oligarchs, he said, in this country who are taking shape, that are threatening our democracy. And of course, while he had hoped to continue the job and finish it himself, he is now challenging Americans and the nation to carry his work forward, David.
He thanked the First Lady, Jill Biden, who was right there in the Oval with him. Mary, thank you. He also thanked Vice President Kamala Harris, who he said has become like family to him. I want to bring in Ian Pannell. We have just a couple of seconds left here, our chief foreign correspondent, because Ian, he began with what he has worked on for many, many months, and that is the framework for a ceasefire and a way to get these hostages out. He announced that today in these final days of his presidency. President-elect Donald Trump taking credit as well, and was given credit by those in Qatar and in Egypt who helped negotiate this. They gave credit to both the Biden administration and the incoming Trump administration.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a tumultuous period, the last 4 years in foreign policy, from Afghanistan to Ukraine, relations with China, and, of course, the crisis here in the Middle East. Certainly his crowning achievement, I think, on his tenure in terms of foreign policy. The guns are expected to fall silent on the 19th of the month, this Sunday, and some of those hostages will start to be released back to their loved ones, and hopefully an enduring peace process will settle in. That is a legacy worth having. David.
Ian Pannell, our chief foreign correspondent. Ian, my thanks to you as always. Our coverage continues on ABC News Live, abcnews.com. We're going to return you to regular programming. I'll see you tomorrow night for World News Tonight. Good night.
This has been a special report from ABC News.
And there you have it, Scranton Joe in his final farewell, saying goodbye after more than 50 years in public service, saying that he is thinking about who we are and what we should be, reminding us of his successes and his concerns. He said it will take time to feel the full impact of what we have done together, but he went on to say that the seeds have been planted, trying to remind Americans of what his administration has accomplished. He mentioned the new roads and bridges, more jobs, more health care. He said that they had strengthened NATO. But he also talked about the abuse of power, misinformation and disinformation. He talked about distrust, the potential of oligarchs to take control. He said that president's power should not be absolute, and the concentration of power and wealth can cause distrust. It's exhausting and disillusionary. Our chief White House correspondent, Mary Bruce, joins us now from the White House. Mary, give us some of your key takeaways from his final farewell tonight.
Well, I think this speech had many goals, and the president was first and foremost, I think, trying to tout his accomplishments. As you noted, he stressed that many of them are just starting to take shape. People are just starting to feel them. He's planted those seeds. He was trying to define his legacy on his own terms, but he also was really trying to, I think, to argue the importance of American democracy and stressing that it needs to be protected. You heard the president say the ideals of America are constantly being tested, and he did hearken back to that campaign slogan from 2020 when he argued that he believed in the soul of America and that it was at stake. And it is clear that he still thinks it is at stake tonight. He did issue a surprisingly harsh warning to what he argued was the oligarchy that is taking shape in America and that he said threatens our democracy. And of course, you have to take a step back and recognize that this is the president capping a more than 50-year-long career in politics, sitting there in the Oval Office, delivering his final message to the American people. He tried to end on a note of optimism. Of course, he had hoped he would be able to finish the job. That was his campaign slogan for what he had hoped would be his reelection. And now he's arguing that it is up to the American people to carry forward the work that he began, ending there saying, "I love America. I know you do too." Linsey.
Yeah, certainly not leaving on his own terms. And Mary, I'm curious if you were surprised at all. This is someone who really desired to be president from the very beginning. Even I'm reminded of, as we were doing the final farewell to Jimmy Carter, that he said that he was one of the first senators to endorse him and kind of joked that at the time he was too young to run for president. That's why he wasn't doing it at that time. At the time, he was less than 35 years old. And so his ambition has always been to achieve this success. And it kind of struck me that he focused more on what he's concerned about rather than his accomplishments.
Yeah, it was an interesting balance there, for sure. I think you are absolutely right. He is leaving reluctantly. Even recently, he has said that he thought, he could still have beaten Donald Trump. He could have won re-election. It does strike me that the last time we saw President Biden sit behind the Resolute desk and speak to the nation like this was back in July, when he explained to the nation his decision not to continue his bid for re-election. This is not how Joe Biden saw this story playing out. And I think a lot of his message tonight was to his supporters, or to those who may be a bit unsteady and nervous about what is to come. The president trying to assure them, trying to be optimistic, while also being very blunt about what he feels are essentially the threats facing this nation.
And really also, just in our final seconds, Mary, it seemed like he tried to dispel any concept that he might have a frosty relationship with Kamala Harris as vice president.
He certainly did go out of his way to praise her, of course, also thanking his wife, who was there in the room, and others, and also, of course, noting the importance of the transition of power that we are about to see in just a few days here next Monday. It is bittersweet, no doubt, for the president to have to give this address. He was hoping it would be him who would be inaugurated, hoping it would be Kamala Harris, but stressing, for the sake of our democracy, he is going to continue to participate in this peaceful transition of power. Linsey.
Reminding us all that the future is in our hands. Mary Bruce from the White House. Thanks so much, Mary. That is our show for this hour. I'm Linsey Davis. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thanks so much for streaming with us.
The news never stops.
From Tampa, we are here tonight as Hurricane Milton has just made landfall.
The surge just keeps coming up.
Right on the border between Ukraine and Russia.
We're in artillery position about 2 miles away from Gaza.
And ABC News Live is right there everywhere.
We're not far from where this rally took place, so just stick with us here.
Traveling with the president to the U.S.-Mexico border.
Here in London today.
Off the coast of Gaza.
Downtown Tel Aviv, rockets or missiles coming in.
From the most devastating disaster in Hawaii. Some areas are still smoldering.
Wherever the story.
From the front lines, the ruins of Rafah.
From the FBI.
Reporting from Capitol Hill.
In western Portugal.
Outside of Mexico City.
In Iceland. Let's go.
Here in France.
The eclipse across America.
Just stunning.
Unbelievable.
Streaming live to you.
Wherever the story is.
Wherever the story is.
We're going to take you there.
You're streaming.
ABC News Live.
ABC News Live.
You're streaming ABC News Live.
ABC News Live. Streaming free everywhere, because the news never stops.
For the record, your name is Xavier Collins.
Yes.
You have 2 children.
Yes.
When was the last time you saw Cal Bradford alive?
Agent Collins, have a seat.
I walked the president to his room at 22:04.
When did you discover the body?
At 8:01, that's when I found him lying next to his bed.
Did you kill him?
No.
Is a part of you happy that Cal is dead?
You know something serious about to happen. I have an idea.
You guys have eyes on your targets.
Shouldn't we strategize?
Come on, we're gonna improvise. Freestyle.
No.
Donald Trump, historic, taking the oath of office for the second time. Inauguration Day, America turns to ABC News, starting with a special Good Morning America. Then live all across the day, David Muir, right there as history is made. Monday on ABC.
Reporting from New York, I'm Eva Pilgrim. Wherever the story is, we'll take you there. You're streaming ABC News Live.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Linsey Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. There was a major breakthrough in the Middle East today, 467 days after Hamas's horrific terror attack on Israel and the bloody conflict in Gaza that has cost tens of thousands of Palestinian lives. The two sides have agreed on a framework for at least peace in the short term. But first, we turn to the White House, where President Biden just moments ago gave his farewell address.
This will be my final address to you from the American people, from the Oval Office, from this desk as president. And I've been thinking a lot about who we are and maybe more importantly, who we should be.
The president, with just days to go in his administration, with a stark warning to the country, offering this.
Today, an oligarchy is taking shape in America of extreme wealth, power, and influence that literally threatens our entire democracy, our basic rights and freedoms, and a fair shot for everyone to get ahead.
Our chief White House correspondent Mary Bruce joins us now from the White House lawn. Mary, what were the president's goals tonight in delivering this speech? Do you think that he achieved them?
Well, certainly he wanted to have a chance to define his legacy for the American people, for himself in a lot of ways. He did tout his accomplishments. He certainly noted that some of them may just be starting to be felt, but said that, it was important that the seeds have been planted. But this was also a chance for him to speak more broadly about the state of American democracy, the importance of American democracy, and the need to protect it. We heard the president say that the ideals of America are constantly being tested, and he did harken back to the themes of his 2020 race, where he argued that the soul of the nation was at stake. Clearly, he thinks that is still the case. And he did issue some really harsh warnings, surprisingly harsh, I thought, about what may be taking place in the country, especially noting abuses of power, warning that an oligarchy is taking shape in America that threatens our democracy. This was really a chance for the president, someone who is leaving the office reluctantly, someone who was obviously hoping that he would win re-election, still actually thinks that might have been possible, a chance for him to argue that what comes next is really in the hands of Americans, that it is up to the nation to shape its own history going forward. Linsey.
Yeah, interesting that in recent days he has said as much, that he believes that had he stayed in the race that he would have won. And Mary, the president, though, did not shy away tonight from warning of unchecked social media and unchecked artificial intelligence, divorcing the country from the truth. Let's listen to a portion of that.
The powerful forces want to wield their unchecked influence to eliminate the steps we've taken to tackle the crime crisis, to serve their own interest for power and profit. We must not be bullied into sacrificing the future of our children and our grandchildren. We must keep pushing forward and push faster. Social media is giving up on fact-checking. The truth is smothered by lies told for power and for profit. We must hold the social platforms accountable to protect our children, our families, and our very democracy from the abuse of power.
And that's really the portion that I found to be extraordinary. How unusual was it to have a president state things that past generations perhaps would have taken for granted?
It is really remarkable to think about, especially given that he is now capping off this more than 50-year career in politics, the warnings that he is making really about the importance of protecting democratic institutions. We heard him, in addition to warning about the dangers of social media, touting the importance and stressing the importance of a free press. The president, we know, has, I think, struggled with the fact that he had to deal with so much misinformation, that he wasn't, during his time in office, able to better take on that challenge. And it is a challenge for the entire country and certainly anyone in the political sphere. So the president coming out and trying to put that at the top of Americans' minds as he leaves office and they think about the incoming administration as well.
Mary Bruce from the White House for us. Mary, thanks so much. Joining us now, ABC News contributor and former DNC chair Donna Brazile and senior editor of The Dispatch and ABC News political contributor Sarah Isgur. Thank you both for joining us. Donna, let's start with you. You've, of course, known President Joe Biden for a long time. This was the last major speech of his career. Your thoughts?
Well, as you well know, Linsey, had Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. lived, he would have turned 96 today. Dr. King was a drum major for justice, and I think tonight he would have thought about Joe Biden's legacy. May the work that I've done speak for me. Joe Biden has had a long career in Washington, D.C., but it's been a period of sacrifice for him and his family, but also he believes in service. When I saw the president a couple of weeks ago, he talked about those long years of wanting to get involved in politics, to make a difference, to be a civil rights lawyer, to be a champion for equal rights. And what I heard tonight was, yes, a president who understands the long view of history, that he left behind an administration that got us back on our feet, reopened our schools, got us back to work, and a president who's proud of the work that he has done. So well done, Mr. President. I'm looking forward on Sunday to hearing him at Mother Emanuel Church down in Charleston, South Carolina. Joe Biden still have a lot of fight in him. I know many people doubt it, but Joe Biden deeply cares about the American people. He said, and he promised he would be a president for all Americans. And I do believe he kept this promise.
Sarah, any standout moments for you?
A moment that really stood out was when he talked about the need for Americans to respect the institutions of the courts he mentioned, the press he mentioned. And yet in the last several months, of course, Joe Biden himself has attacked the courts by pardoning his son, saying that he couldn't have received a fair trial. He was the president who's met the least with reporters in press conferences, et cetera. I thought that was an interesting juxtaposition and maybe summary of the entire Biden presidency and some of the tensions that he leaves behind. Even how he began the speech and talking about this hostage release negotiated between Hamas and Israel. Right, this comes at the very end of Joe Biden's presidency, something that he's worked on since October 7th. Even with his best intentions, perhaps unable to get that over the finish line until Donald Trump came in. Again, this tension, this juxtaposition.